Hi, I'm Robin Waite, author of multiple best-selling books, including Online Business Starter, Marketing Machine, and more recently, Take Your Shot. I'm also the founder of Fearless Business, which is a business accelerator for coaches, consultants, and freelancers. And in my episode for the Business Growth Architect Show, I'm going to be sharing a story about when the unexpected happens. And in my case, my personal journey started back in August when I was diagnosed with a grade 1 brain tumor. So if you want to know what to do when the unexpected happens, head on over and give the full show a listen.
And hello, fabulous person. Beate Gillette here. I am the host of the Business Growth Architect Show, and I want to welcome you to today's episode where we discuss how to navigate strategy and spirituality to achieve time and financial freedom. Truly successful people have learned how to master both, a clear intention and a strategy to execute that in a spiritual practice that will help them to stay in alignment and on purpose. Please enjoy the show and listen to what our guest today has to say about this very topic. Welcome back. Beate Gillette here, the host of the Business Growth Architect Show. Today is Robin Waite with me, and we are talking about when the unexpected happens, and a topic that couldn't be any more relevant, not just to you, Robin, but also obviously to me, as we just faced losing our home and my business office in the fire. So Robin, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you, Beate. I know as well, I can't imagine what you've been going through. So for you to still go ahead and actually invite me onto the show to chat, it means an awful lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So Robin, for somebody who is not familiar with your work or has never heard about or from you, will you tell us what do you do and how do you solve clients' problems?
Yeah, so I run a coaching practice called Fearless Business, and the concept of it centers around this idea of fearing the things in business and life ever so slightly less that stop you from achieving your goals. So a lot of the clients which I work with are very similar in terms of my background. So they're sort of mid-30s up to sort of mid-50s. They've got families, they've got challenges which they need to get through. I work a lot with very small grassroots businesses, so coaches, consultants, freelancers, people who are just kind of cutting it out there on their own, trying to do something good for their families and get to that 6-figure mark. My sweet spot really, though, is helping those types of businesses where they're charging sort of hourly rates, day rates, figure out what their superpower is. So a lot of people are busy exchanging time for money or very much based on time and materials. And they don't realize that they need to be selling something based on the outcomes and results which they deliver for their clients, because that's really what their clients are buying. So I help them to figure out what their superpower is. And then we have the pricing conversation, digging into sort of money mindset and their core beliefs around sort of money, limiting beliefs and various things like that. And then also, because now we've got a better product at a high price, we then have to go through the gears in terms of sales and helping them to articulate their value better so that they can convey that message to their clients.
Excellent. So you really help them to figure out not just what their superpower, but also what their super problem is.
Yes.
And then once they know that, then you can help them resolve that. You and I, we had a previous conversation about when the unexpected happened and how do you face when the unexpected happens? Because when the unexpected happens, there is typically a pivot, a change, some sort of massive impact on the way you are doing things. Do you mind sharing your personal story on what that unexpected was for you? And then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, well, there's actually two instances, and they're kind of linked in a way, actually. But the more recent one, which we chatted about earlier on, sort of last year, was in August. After a few health complications, I got diagnosed with a grade 1 tumor on my brainstem, which, I've had a lot of time to process it now. At the time, it was pretty horrific when you get sort of handed news like that. And thankfully, I'm in very capable hands down at, we have Southmead Hospital down at Bristol, which are just, the whole team there have been absolutely brilliant. But at the time when they diagnosed it, you hear the words brain tumor and just your world melts. You're just like, everything that you thought was important all of a sudden disappears away. Business has been my passion ever since I can sort of remember, through my early teens. So for the last 20 or 30 years, I've just been heavily into like businesses and entrepreneurship and things like that. And then I got the news and it's just all of a sudden that was just like Is any of this really important? And so it was August I'm trying to think now what the actual date was, but it was mid-August when I found out. I think it's August the 4th, actually, when I found out the news. And I went through all of the phases of like grief. And I mean, you've experienced this as well now, probably not just with the fire and what's happened with your home, but there will be other instances in your life as well. But the closest level of grief that I could compare it to was when my dad passed away 13 years ago. Because in my head, I've been running businesses, I'm very positive and I make plans about the future, and I have a young family. In my head, I'm going to live till like I'm 100, and I got all these years in front of me to build this future. And then all of a sudden they say brain tumor, and you're like, oh crap. There's some good news, right? So if there could be. So since speaking to the consultants, I've discovered that what I have is called a subependymoma. So if anybody did want to go and Google that, you're welcome to. It's quite rare. It's also possibly one of the best kind of tumors that you can get in your head, because it's benign and it's very slow growing. So it is growing, but it's very slow. And the typical sort of average age where people get symptomatic with what I've got, there's something called hydrocephalus, where you get brain fluid kind of builds up and nausea and you fall over and all sorts of lovely stuff. That's the nice stuff. Typical age is like mid-50s. So I'm kind of now, I'm 43. And this is where I started to turn around from sort of dealing with that grief and that shocking sort of news. And I was very fortunate. I tend not to work in August anyway, so I was kind of quite a quiet period so far as the business was concerned. So I had a lot of time to process this. But then coming out of it going, right, well, I might not live to my hundreds, my 90s or whatever, but I've got a good stretch in front of me now, at least until my mid-50s, where it might cause me problems. The consultants have also said it might never come to anything. It might have stopped growing and then we're okay. So yeah, a big shock.
So I think what happens is when we get a diagnosis or a news, and in my case, it was like I'm on my honeymoon in Costa Rica, and 3 days later, we find out there's a fire on the 4th day. My office burns on the 5th day. My house burns. So when you have a message that is life-changing, as in your case, as in my case, what did you do that honored that massive change you must make? Because I'm sure stress is probably going to be one of the worst things you can do to yourself now. And you're going to have to watch your sleep. You're going to have to watch your exercise. You're going to have to really take care of yourself, bring a lot of joy in your life, which is often contradictory to building a business, because you buckle up, get through it, hustle, make it work. How do you manage that? Like, what did you do? What are there steps? Did you put a process behind it? How did you manage the emotional side? So I have like 10,000 questions about this.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned about like the exercise and the health side of it specifically. So one of the clues that something wasn't quite right was I'm a very keen cyclist and surfer, and I used to go out on Sunday mornings with my cycling buddies, and we'd do 50, 60, 70 miles in a ride, so long distances. And then from about 5 years ago, I got cramp. Now, cramp isn't unusual when you're doing a sport like cycling, and you'd expect to get a cramp in your calf or your hamstring or something like that. But one day, several years ago, my whole body just shut down. So I was getting cramp from my jawline all the way down to like through my stomach, through my arms, my everything. My whole body just went, and I had to call my wife to come and pick me up. I was gutted she was busy, but thankfully there was a chip shop near me. So I just had stuffed my face full of food, and I managed to sort of limp home. I was thankfully not far from home. But gradually I went on this decline with my rides, where I could do 40 miles and then 35 miles and 30 and 25. And it reached a point earlier on this year, and this is what led me to and I was starting to get headaches and other symptoms. So, and it got to a point where I was doing a 5-mile bike ride and getting full body cramps, body was shutting down. So when I finally got the diagnosis, that's the point I know now something's wrong, and you kind of you're like, right, okay. And I had to let go of that. I'd always had this hope that it might be short term, or it might have been a virus or COVID or something that I'd caught that might have created this. Now I'm like, no, it's a tumor. it's not going anywhere unless I have it removed. I have brain surgery. That's the only option with what I've got. So I just had to let go of my dreams of becoming Olympic cyclist or whatever it is, would never have happened. But just kind of accept that, okay, this is what I've got. And so one of the small changes I've made is I didn't want to go out and be 5 or 10 miles out in the countryside and then have this episode on my bike. So I've decked out my garage now with a treadmill and some weights. I'm just waiting on a rowing machine, and there's a new static bike which I want to get in there. So at least I can exercise and stay healthy and as fit as I can. But if I collapse, I'll do it on my garage floor at home, not out in the middle of nowhere. So that was the first thing. The second thing as well is that was on a journey with the business, for example, where I was starting to sort of be kinder to myself, basically. I've been in business for 20 years, and I had made a pact with myself before this anyway. I wouldn't work on Fridays. So again, things like that just reaffirmed this, right? No, not only am I not going to work on Fridays, but I'm also just going to do something nice for myself, treat myself to go and get my hair cut, or go and have a massage at the local spa, or just do something that was wholesome, that wasn't work, that wasn't necessarily family responsibilities, although that obviously is an important part of the journey as well. And those changes, like the biggest thing as well, I realized, B, that I was saying yes to just too many things that weren't really like lighting me up. So this was like a big catalyst more recently where I'm like, no, if I want to go on a trip to Dubai, and it's been on my mind for 2, 3, 4 years. I've got friends out there, I've got clients out there, there's a massive scene out there, like in entrepreneurdom. And I was like, I want to do that. And I'd been putting it off because I'm like, it's not fair on my wife if I go away for a week. I'll miss the kids and I made every excuse not to go to Dubai. And I got diagnosed in August, and I was like, do you know what? Life's too short. I don't want to miss out on going to Dubai. So I booked it. I felt so much guilty about leaving my wife and kids. But actually it was probably one of the best things I could have done. I did a lot of business stuff out there, but I had lovely time in the sunshine just to contemplate and make a plan for 2025 and what changes I need to make. But I was also able to invest whilst I was out there into 2 fairly sizable partnerships. You may or may not have heard of these guys, but they're well known in their own circles. But 2 YouTubers, one called Simon Squibb, who's kind of really blown up in the last couple of years. For those that know him, he's the What's Your Dream guy. So he goes up and interviews people in the street and asks them what their dream is. And then also Chris Do as well, who's got a fantastic YouTube channel and a brand called The Future.
Chris Do is a personal friend of mine.
There you go.
I had, believe it or not, I was one of the first conversations when he first thought about starting his business. And then if you ask him about our story, he'll tell you about the conversation that we have had. He says that there was a pivotal moment in our conversation that made him really take the leap. So, yes, he's a good friend, a great human being, a phenomenal person.
He's just the guy's got like so much love to give, and it was so he was speaking out at the 1 billion followers summit in Dubai, and it's so we had a mutual friend. There's a guy called Matt Etham who's one of his coaches, and I've done a lot of work with Matt over the years. So Matt was like, "Come out to Dubai. Chris is out here as well," and it transpired anyway. I didn't do a lot of work at the workshop because Chris was doing his thing, but Chris invited me to come and co-facilitate one of the workshops he was delivering for this summit,
Wonderful.
which was such an honor. It was a dream for me to be in Dubai, working with somebody of Chris's sort of caliber.
Somebody like that, yeah.
It just honestly, it couldn't have been better. So one of the things which I did, so I'm always looking at opportunities now like that, because life is harder than it was before I got diagnosed, and like getting up in the morning is a struggle and various things like this. And I'm like, I'm out in Dubai, Chris is out here, and I'm like, so imagine if you had to spend, like, how much would it cost for 3 hours of Chris's time, like 1-to-1? It'd be like tens of thousands of dollars, right? To do it, So he very generously paid for my summit ticket, and I thought, right, and he's invited me out here to be in his entourage. I thought I need to repay him. So I don't know if you'll like me sharing this story or not, but I booked a yacht. I think it was like £700, like $800 or $900 or something. But part of my motivation behind that was, one, I got to hang out with Chris, but also Chris is on a boat with me. Like, it's such a great opportunity. He can't leave. So it's a great opportunity to do some networking. Right. So, but it was just great hanging out with him. And he told a few stories and we chatted and stuff like that. He was asking about the business, and his 2 sons were out there as well with us as well. So they got to join us on the boat, and then a couple of mutual friends. But you asked me before July if I could have seen myself in January being out on a boat in Dubai with somebody like Chris, I'd have been like, no, absolutely no hope in hell would I have been able to do that. And it's just this realization that life is precious and it's very short, and you need to take these opportunities when they do show up.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. I actually really love that Chris Do is like part of this story. That just makes me smile a lot. So now we talked about when the unexpected happened, right? So you have, if I rephrase this, you had to really come to terms with that this wasn't just something that happened, a cut, you put a band-aid on it, it heals, we'll move on. This is something that you're going to have to deal with from here on out for the rest of your life, most likely. Now, your mindset is clear that self-care is important, that there are certain things that you probably should not be doing, that you now need to take care of opportunities in a different kind of a way. So was that a strategy that you implemented where you said, I cannot hustle the way I did. I need to go, let's say, to a place like Dubai where people that might create opportunity are? Was this a natural thing? Did you fall into that, or did you deliberately do it?
Bit of both. So my background, I used to run a marketing agency. So I was a very introverted web designer and sort of creator. And it was 8 years ago I transitioned into coaching, and that's where I started to. You have to go onto podcasts and speak from on the stage and do some what other people would see as very extroverted things. So kind of getting outside of my comfort zone, and probably like Fearless is probably more of a projection than it is just a brand name. It's kind of like part of me is that I always had this desire to want to be a bit more fearless. And I see all these people having this like remarkable success, like Chris, Daniel Priestley, Rich Litvin is another guy who's based in LA, I think, who amazing coach who I really look up to and respect, just doing these amazing things. And it's taken me all of this length of time, plus a little bit of a nudge with what happened in August, to realize that if you don't ask, you don't get, right? And I would go to events where I'd see these amazing creative people, and then I would just be a passenger. I would just sit in the back row and listen to it. And I would enjoy the event, don't get me wrong. I'd learn lots, absolutely. But I was always a little bit, and I'm going to be very honest now, there's a little bit of the green-eyed monster. A little bit of jealousy was coming out. Like, I want to be that. I want to be that guy on the stage.
I want to be that person that's so successful, but I'm not, and you're kind of like, good for them.
Yeah. And I kind of like hoped that through, I like to think I'm one of the good guys, that somehow I would end up there, but because somebody placed me there, not because I put myself there. And I've come to realize now that being intentional about who it is that you are and what you want to create for yourself is as important as having a very clear and direct path, if that makes sense. So so for me, like what that looks like, I wrote down a list of 10 people who I vibed off their content. I loved their values and their message and their mission and everything that they were about. Chris obviously being one of them, Simon Squibb's on that list, Ali Abdal's on that list, another great YouTuber, Daniel Priestley as well. So there's all these amazing creative minds that I thought were just great people, and I would love to hang out with them. And so this was where the crossover happens, because there's that point where you can like go to these events and be a shrinking violet at the back of the room. But then I realized I needed to put myself in the front row. I actually needed to sit in the front row so that I can look into their whites of their eyes, and when they finish their talk, stand up, shake their hand, take a selfie with them, but also congratulate them on the amazing work which they're doing. I know that a lot of these guys get their plaudits and things like that, but also I recognize that I've been in business for 20 years, and they probably do look at me now, they know me, and see that there's some experience there, which I'm a good person to have around. So actually, but I wouldn't have done that 2 years ago. I wouldn't have stepped up and had a photo and shook their hand and like congratulated them and added value to their world. So here's a crazy story. One of the things which I did around this sort of notion of, choosing the person, putting them on the list, being intentional, and then adding value. Ali Abdal was running an event, and there was about 600 people there, but it was in a university, and it wasn't like your traditional business sort of venue. Everybody looked lost. So I put down my bag and my coat, and I started directing people. I was like, loser over there, the cafe's there, the auditorium's this way, just being helpful. And Ali's general manager, a guy called Angus, he came up to me. He was like, Robin, what are you doing? And I was like, well, everybody looked lost. I thought I'd just help out and just go give directions and stuff. And he's like, oh, right. Okay. You don't have to do that, by the way, Robin. You're a guest here as well at this event. was like, no, it's fine. It doesn't matter. And he went to walk away. And then he took 3 steps, turned around, comes back. And he said, oh, actually, Robin, whilst I've got you, there's a product that we're thinking about launching. I'd love to pick your brains on the pricing side of things. So I was like, bang. And so I didn't have to ask for that. I just had to step outside my comfort zone a little bit and do something which I did feel a little bit awkward about. But it sparked that conversation. And behind the scenes, I've ended up working with Angus as well as some of the other people within Ali's team. I do that work for free as well, believe it or not, despite the fact I'm the pricing guy. But it's because these partnerships, I've realized the value in, just helping people out. There's a lot of people who get to a certain position with their careers, and it's very hard to know who to trust. And I think it's really important to, like, when you're building a partnership, that you give enough value to help build that trust up. And then so long as, like, a lot of people, when they look at partnerships, they're always thinking about what's in it for me. What can I get out of this? How can I get referrals and money and commissions and you name it? Since the tumor, especially, that news, I'm not motivated by money at all. I'm like, if I do a good job on this planet, the money will come as a byproduct of doing a job well done. But I'm now getting to hang out with some really cool, fun people. And not only that, but I also get to make a much greater impact as a result of that now and reach more people. If I'd just been soldiering on my little journey on my own, there's only so many people you can reach, so much impact you can have. So I realized I need other people in order to be able to, create more impact and reach more people with.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, which is really a learning that I'm going through right now. And it builds up on what you said. So very much like you, I have given, for decades we're talking about. I just turned 60 last year. And there comes a point where you go, when I look in my bank account, I look at the people that I've helped and their bank account, I do see a discrepancy. I made good money when I sold my business, but the business wasn't generating as much money as I thought it should or could have done. But now with this disaster, with this catastrophe, really this apocalyptic catastrophe, it's not just my house, it's my whole community, it's the schools, it's the shops, it's every business owner in the Palisades. It's wiped from the planet. There is nothing other than burned structures. But what I have started to see is the outpour of love and support toward me. So the receiving now that I'm getting from, the GoFundMe page to people responding in person is something very simple. I wrote about this yesterday. I was having a really tough day yesterday, and I said, I'm yearning for a fluffy robe to wrap myself in for some comfort. And 2 people immediately reached and texted me and said, I'll get you the robe right now. Tell me what you want. You'll have it tomorrow. And for somebody who's like you in sort of this giving and understand this gratitude principle, but there will come a point where it comes to you. And then the receiving, I think it's twice as hard, actually, to receive from other people. But that's how the infinity loop closes. You have to learn how to do both. So the expectation of the giving, to sum this point up, is to give freely and without an expectation of return, because otherwise it's quid pro quo. But when you do, it creates a resonance that at some point from somewhere you don't even expect it. Something comes to you and you go, how did that even happen? But that's because of the resonance. How do you feel about this part of it?
I wholeheartedly agree. I think life is one great big energy exchange, essentially. And kind of the fuel into that is that you give more than you can take. And actually Simon Squibb he's really wonderful because his mantra is give without take. And so I've started to follow that as much as I possibly can. It's like give as much as I can. And again, there are some wonderful sort of business events going on and things like that, which asked me a year ago, would I spend 5 or 10K to like sponsor an event? Because selfishly, no, because I'm like, well, it's my money and what am I going to get out of this and things like that. Now I'm like, no, because if I put 5K into an event, which 4,000 people are going to go to and get to enjoy as a result of my part that I get to play in that, plus I get to attend it, do a bit of networking, have some fun whilst I'm there as well. That's like a really wholesome thing to do. And I hadn't seen that before. I was very much in that sort of one-minded sort of transaction approach. But what you've suggested there is like, what I always say is like, the money is a byproduct of a job well done. If you just do a good job on this planet, or the best job you possibly can do, people will see that. But I've noticed as well, you also have to be open to receiving it, because there's a lot of people who are also very closed off from receiving help. And interestingly, that's one thing which has definitely changed for me is not just receiving the help and being open to that, but actually going out and asking for it.
You have it ask, yeah. And the asking is challenging, especially for if you've never done this before, or if you have childhood trauma, or you've been in bad relationships and other people knowing what you want was weaponized. So there is a lot of cleaning up to do in order for you to receive in a healthy way contributions. But yes, people say, how can we help? How can we help? And your first reaction says, no, I'm okay. But this is too big. This is too big. I mean, this is too big even for me, and I do need help. And so when somebody says, can I send you a fluffy robe? I will say yes, because I don't even have the time, the energy to go buy another thing, to go look, to take care of these things, because there's so many decisions I have to make. And I think in your case, when the unexpected happens, it's the same thing. There are other priorities that are so important and so primarily important that you do need help with some of the other stuff. So when somebody offers help, figure out how. Have them, or something simple. We realize that grocery shopping and cooking and cleaning up takes a lot of energy. So we're like, send us meals, because that's one less decision for us to make. We open the fridge, we can take something, we'll warm it up, we're good to go. So there are so many different ways where, just like how can I contribute, where you can also say, what can I ask for?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still in awe of you, B, in terms of like the fact that we're still stood here talking, given what you've been through. But it also shows the generosity in that, because I don't know whether that, and you can answer me honestly. I mean, I know for one, you obviously you want to push forward with the podcast and things like that. But was there not like a small part of you which is just like, just park the podcast, just focus on family and getting our home back together and things like that?
When this happened, interesting question. We were on a spiritual retreat, and in this retreat, what came up for me was letting go. Now, let's just say this is letting go extreme. I could have handled a bit more of an easier version of it, but that was the theme of it. There were three things that came up for me. One was rest. The other one was letting go of everything in my past, and really the third piece, stepping into wisdom, knowing when to participate, knowing when to facilitate, and knowing when to observe. And that I was told that at this point in my life, that I'm asked now to take everything that I've created over whatever the 37 years I've been in business, all the processes, the strategic facilitations, the workbooks, the how do you make it super simple, the 90-day sprints, the super simple goal setting, everything I have created, I'm asked to make it available to everybody. So the business model is now changing into, instead of me looking for clients, is me helping others in the consulting and coaching space on how to perform better by all the things that I have created. And the clock's ticking. It's a 5-year plan, and I don't have any time to waste. And I don't like the dwelling in the inevitable. So I give myself time to fall into these pits of despair and PTSD and full-on depression. Like last night, I had a really, really tough day yesterday. But then I get up in the morning and I go, I have to focus on that the universe is a friendly place, and that what's happening is for me and through me and not against me. And then the only way I can reframe it is I have to see what it pushes me to do, because within that must be the gift. But I don't see it yet. Let's talk about losing everything you have, every card my daughter wrote. I will never look at a Mother's Day card my daughter wrote when she was 6 years old. I will never wear the beautiful garnet necklace that I bought myself when I sold my business in Prague that I put on when I need to be feeling successful. All of these things are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I feel like a yo-yo at times where I keep going up and down. But the only sane way for me to not go nuts is to sit here, to talk to you, to remind myself that my mindset is the key to what comes out of this. Ultimately, when we die, I can't take any garnet necklaces or Mother's Day cards with me anyway. I mean, I would have liked to have it for another 30 years, but ultimately, this is not ours. We're borrowing everything anyway. So that's what I'm grappling with. But the only way is forward, or I go nuts. I literally will go crazy if I don't do this.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I couldn't have sat still in August and I got the news, and it sounds like you're in a similar sort of space. Sometimes doing things can be a much needed distraction actually from that, and give you that sense of purpose and staying on that mission which you've got in order to help other business owners. But I'll share something that's a little bit personal. I don't want to go too deep into this, but I was having a tough day this morning because I was tired. My daughter's I'm so proud of her. She's got into county finals with her swimming. You're sat by a pool cheering your daughter on and things like that. But literally, it's like I haven't had a break in 2 or 3 weeks now. And I kid you not, I'm gonna have to replay it. This won't work for the audio version of it. But I went to do a video this morning for my YouTube channel. And for 10 minutes, that was the position I was in.
So for those of you who can't see him, his head is literally resting on the microphone tip.
And then do you know what happened next? Right? So I'm already feeling a bit rubbish. I'm just kind of okay, right, come on, pull yourself together.
Yes, the weight of the world, yes.
Well, not defeated, just it was just coming to terms. I've got responsibilities. I have a group coaching call. I've got a couple of client calls in the afternoon, things like that, and this podcast as well, which mean a lot to me. And pull yourself together, Robbins. And then I recorded the video. It's super proud of myself. Sent it off. First message I get back within 10 seconds of my team receiving it. Robin, have you got the audio to go with the video?
Oh, no.
I had to laugh. I was just, at that point, I was like, brilliant. You can't do anything else though, can you? It's kind of like you can't change the past. You just got to keep on having that slow march forward, who I think is a major part of this. Business owners and entrepreneurs especially, I think, get very attached to outcomes. They get very stuck with this, I believe if I do this, then this is going to happen. And then when the unexpected happens, they can't rationalize it. They can't deal with it. And they feel, it's Simon Sinek puts it really eloquently. He talks about in his book, The Infinite Game. People assume that business is made up of short-term wins and losses, and they can't really rationalize the losses. But actually, the goal in business is actually to stay in business for as long as possible. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. But the goal is to stay in business.
So, Robin, we're going to wrap up this interview for somebody who's now interested in your coaching services and maybe wants to figure out how you can help them. Where do we send them?
So I have a gift for everybody, actually, B. So it's a signed copy of my book, Take Your Shot. So, and there's a story in there as well, which is actually quite, I won't do a spoiler alert, but relevant to what we've been discussing today. It's actually written as a parable, a story about Russ, who's a golf pro, and he's going on this journey with his business, but I won't say any more than that. But I've got a copy. I'll send them anywhere in the world, but fearless.biz/TYS for Take Your Shot, and we'll send that out there.
Sounds good to me. Well, thank you so much. You've been amazing. I really appreciate you being on the show. I will be following your journey, and I'm sure you and I will be in touch in the future.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. And that's it for us for today. If you know somebody who is facing an unexpected challenge, something that has derailed them or is very difficult for them, feel free to share this episode with them, and let's help more people to really manage some of life's unexpected turns so that as we help you, we can help more people. And with that, I say goodbye. Until next time.
So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. Please subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, a comment, and share this episode with one more person so that you can help us help more people. Thank you again. Until next time. Goodbye.